Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Jason Davis. I will tell you all about Jason in just a moment. Grace Under Pressure is that show that deals with what's so often dismissed as the soft stuff, the caring, the commitment that we exert for others. And when you do it as a leader, as you will very definitely discover that Jason is, you do it with a singular purpose of bringing people together to achieve intended and great results. Jason Davis, welcome to Grace Under Pressure.
Thanks, John, for having me.
Great. I want to tell everybody about you. You are from the music and entertainment business, and so it's a pleasure to have you on here. You've been in the business, I think, 24 years, and you've been managing people all that time too. And you've worked with some stars that everyone knows, people like Boyz II Men, Sugar Ray, P. Diddy, Alabama, Lonestar, and one of my very favorites, Dolly Parton. You are now in management. You manage songwriters and singers and the whole talent. You worked all across the industry in different continents, New York, London, and Nashville. You're speaking to us today from Florida. And you run a management company, one-on-one, and also Noble Management. So welcome, Jason. It's an honor to have you on the show today. So
an honor to be here.
Okay. Now, you began your career as a musician. What did you most enjoy about that career choice?
Well, I started with a few friends down the street from my house when I was a kid. I wrote my first song with my neighbor across the street at 5 years old. But he still remembers the song.
Yeah.
Started a band when I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was always a therapeutic outlet. There was a lot of dysfunction in our household. Mm-hmm. My parents fought a lot. Eventually, when I was 17, my dad left. And it was pretty rough. And my parents ended up not liking each other for a long period of time. And so it was just always a therapeutic outlet for me. It was definitely something that God had planted in me. I almost had no choice but to be in love with it and do it. I used to carry a Mickey Mouse guitar to the dinner table when I was a little boy. So it was just always music, and God used it, to, really as a therapy for me in my teenage years and in early 20s. And then, it became a career.
Great. So what led you to move on to the business side of the business? I mean, it is a pretty rough and tumble business. Some people say the movie business is tough. I'd argue that the music business is a little more cutthroat, but what do I know?
It is very tough, and it was a lot tougher when I started. The inroads of it is very tough. I moved out on my own when I was 18. Again, my parents got divorced. I spent about 5 years until I was 23 years old, basically trying to figure out who I was, what I wanted to do in life. And the only path I knew to take was to try to become my father and try to follow in my father's footsteps and head into more of a corporate job and work for a company and climb the ladder. And I didn't know it was entrepreneurship for me at the time, but I knew after 5 years I was not going to make it the way my dad made it. And so I, for the first time in my life at 23 years old, I started doing a very deep dive into, okay, who am I? What am I passionate about? What am I in love with? What could I do and enjoy the rest of my life? And everything kept coming back to music. And that sparked me, the switch flipping and me saying, I have to, in an entrepreneurial way, go after this.
Yeah. Okay. But you were a musician, or are a musician, but what was it that attracted to you about the business? And because some people will be frightened by it. So not you.
Well, I was always a very, very very minimal musician. I played 4 chords on the guitar. It was really more of an instrument for me to be able to write songs.
Oh, okay.
Writing melodies, singing melodies, and writing lyrics was always what I loved. And
Oh,
playing a guitar was just a way to get those melodies out. So I was never really that deep of a musician. I did love writing songs, but I also realized that long term, I was more passionate about figuring out the business of music versus creating music. And I did have, thanks to God, I had some early success as a songwriter.
Oh,
And that even helped further inform once I had the success of it. And I was faced with, okay, I have to keep repeating this success. I have to keep writing great songs. That helped inform that I was not as passionate about songwriting as I was, trying to figure out how do I take a songwriter or a musician or an artist and help them have this dream happen for them, just like it happened for me.
actually, that is the classic management thing, because one goes into a career, be it a discipline, could be in an accountancy, marketing, whatever, and they individual achievers, and then all of a sudden they do well, and hey, you're going to be in management. You made that choice for yourself, did you not, Jason? So
I did. I would say 50% of it was myself. 50% of it was me realizing that I indeed was not John Lennon. And it was almost like I was a basketball player, and I understood the game very well, but I knew I was not Michael Jordan. And so sometimes I describe myself as, sometimes I feel like almost like I'm a football coach that used to be a player, and I was a good player, but I was never the best player. But
make the best coaches better.
I'm a better coach than I was a player.
Yeah, and by the way, they often make the best coaches because they know what the struggle is like and they see the game differently. So I'm guessing that's it. So here's a big question too. I always ask in my coaching. Obviously, you spoke very passionately about your commitment to music. Did managing others? Did you derive energy and enthusiasm from that, Jason? So,
yeah, when I was having success as a songwriter. So when I got into the music industry as a field, and I started having success, the way I describe it is I felt like I was on a beach vacation by myself. And I was having these victories and successes that were mind-blowing. But I really felt like I had no one to share it with. And when I started working with artists or songwriters or just talent and helping them, when they would have even a slight success or a little baby victory, I felt for the first time that I was on a beach vacation sharing the photos with somebody. And I was able to say, hey, remember that mountain, remember when we hiked that. If that became much more satisfying, and just seeing how this wasn't about just enhancing my life, which it was, but it was also, it's so much more rewarding when you can enhance somebody else's life as your life is enhancing. So I found a lot more satisfaction and purpose in that.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's a beautiful analogy. I love the being on the beach by yourself, being on the beach with others. That's a very generous image there. So, as helping a fellow musician or songwriter, what is it that you're doing? I know you have excellence in management. Do you give advice musically, or do you let the artist do what he or she does best? So,
I mean, I'm basically coaching. You could call it management. I think in the beginning stages, I'm much more of a coach, but I'm coaching every single microscopic detail of their life. I'm teaching them how to use. Most of the time, I'm teaching them how to use a calendar on their phone. How to keep organized, how to not miss appointments, how to not forget a call.
Life skills,
responding to text messages. Like, hey, somebody texted you, you didn't heart it or thumbs it up, or you didn't let them know you even saw it. It's being detailed. It's how are they dressing? How are they doing their hair? How are they doing their facial hair?
Yeah.
How do they walk in a room?
Ah.
Are there, their handshake, eye contact? How are they conducting themselves in interviews when they meet people? If they walk into a record label and are being looked at as potential, how do they walk in the room? How do they light up a room? How do
Mhm.
they, exude confidence? How
Mhm.
do I put them in situations where confidence grows?
Yeah,
Um,
you are a coach. This is exactly what we coaches do. So that is one. I love it. And as you were talking about it, I remember an old story from the days of Motown when they were in Detroit. They had there was a woman who headed up their I don't know her official title, but she was in charge of manners and teaching them all the kinds of things that you did. She both women and men. I mean, she had a title, but it was talent management per se, but on the physical and dress side and all of those things. So wonderful
yeah,
comportment, if we will. So,
even down to how to carry on a conversation.
mm,
If you meet a vice president of a company, how to listen, how
mhm,
to ask questions based on the last statement they said, listening for follow-up questions, how to continue a dialogue.
yeah,
It's an endless, teaching them about the industry.
yeah,
I've learned that when you have somebody that you want to grow, the more educated they are on the business, the more educated they are on an industry, the blind spots, the areas where the ship could sink.
mhm,
Where's the pinhole at the bottom of the ship been historically for other people in this position?
right.
I'm coaching and teach. Then it's performing and
Mhm,
writing songs. I mean, it's
yeah,
an endless sea of
yeah.
coaching.
That's wonderful. And I think what's fascinating about that is so how do you give tough advice? So for example, when they have a setback, something they believed in, a song, whatever, didn't chart, whatever, what kind of advice or conversations do you have, Jason? So
Well, usually what I try to do, it's no one's perfect at this, but I think it's in a dream world as a manager, I think it's good to be able to use your experience to let somebody know what is going to happen before it happens based on their decisions. So it's almost like a child, like, hey, if you stay out past midnight tonight and don't listen to mom and dad, you're going to lose your privilege to go out with your friends, or
yeah,
whatever it is. And
yeah,
then it becomes their choice. So hey, if you want to go with that song, I'm letting you know from, a lot of experience and relationships I have that there's a really good chance that that song's not going to do very well for you.
mhm.
And if it doesn't do it very well for you, this is what your life is going to look like. This is what your income is going to look like. This is what the next 10 years are going to look like, potentially based on that one decision. And if you still believe in that song that much, then go with the song.
Yeah.
So what I try to do is I use a lot of I use a lot of experience to every single decision an artist is making, let them know what the result is going to be or very likely going to be.
Okay.
Show them what their life is going to actually look like and feel like based
Mhm.
on that decision. And then it's totally their decision.
Oh, that's good.
And
Now,
whatever their decision is, I love them and I support them and I root for them. And then,
yeah.
if they get frustrated on the result, I at least have that to remind them that it was a decision that they made.
Good. What do you look for in quote unknown talent? I mean, you must be pitched 6 ways to Wednesday. So what do you look for, Jason? So,
Yeah, we are actually, I mean, from music artists in town, we're probably pitched, I would say we're probably pitched, and I don't look at any of these artists in the beginning, but I would say we're probably pitched about 250 to 500 artists every single month,
wow.
aspiring artists. And I
Yeah.
can't look at any of that. I'm so busy,
Yeah.
but we have a process where those artists are weeded out. And I'm probably sitting down having really in-depth meetings with maybe 4 to 5 artists a month.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of vetting that has gone into that. Just, how likable does this person seem? How serious does this person seem? Is there a seed of true potential that could be developed if they
Mm-hmm.
were coachable? And then when I'm meeting somebody, it's more of just number one, I'm just trying to get a feel for, where is their passion level? Um, do they understand what they are desiring to have happen?
Okay.
Because often in life we desire things, but we don't know what the result actually feels like.
Yeah.
And then just making sure I'm painting a very accurate picture of the realities of, you know, the difficulties of what they're desiring to do.
Right. Let me stop you there because by the time they get to you, you will have heard their music. Am I correct? So,
Yeah, I will have listened to it,
yeah.
and
So if my words, they will have passed the music test, if you will. Or then when you get involved, you're looking at them as the whole person. Am I correct in that, Jason? So,
yeah, they're passing a lot. I mean, it's again, it's probably 250 to 500 artists are being actually sent to us a month to
yeah.
check out from various sources
Right.
every single month. I mean, it never
Yeah.
stops. And it's weeded down to about 4 to 5 a month at the most. So,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the in-person thing, I think more than anything else, it's trying to get a read of how coachable is this person, how passionate, how likable is the person. I mean, would I
Mm-hmm.
really want to spend 2 to 3 years of my life,
Oh,
pouring into this person? And because obviously if you work with, whether it's a boss you have or an employee you have, I mean, it takes one person getting into your life that is not enjoyable to work with, that can
yeah.
cause a tremendous amount of stress in my life.
Yeah.
So I try to find people that I feel like I would like to work with and I'd like to have in my life. And they seem like my kind of person. uh,
Mm-hmm.
and just make sure, I always try to make sure that the setup of a relationship or the setup of a journey is set up with a lot of transparency, a lot of detail, and a lot of care for the long-term relationship.
Okay, good. Now you also have the other side of you, which most of our audience knows well, which is quote traditional management. Because you told me when we spoke before, you have a staff of at least 20. So what do you look for in people you hire on the quote business side of your enterprise, Jason? So,
At this point, thanks to God, anyone we hire, it's always a very, very close referral.
mhm,
So we don't ever go out there looking for employees, or it's always, somebody's family member, or if or it's somebody that somebody's worked with before. Like there's a girl
mhm.
I'm talking to in a week from now that I've had 3 different people that I really respect highly in the industry
Mhm.
all separately mention this person to me.
Mm.
So, I'm gonna really take a hard look at her.
Okay.
And then there's another person that, works at a record label, that an artist of mine that I manage, like, just adores this
Mhm.
girl. And
Yeah.
so, and I would say the number one thing I look for above everything else when I'm hiring somebody, the bullseye for me, is how high is this individual's character. I mean, when it comes to honesty, transparency, not being afraid to tell the truth, not being
Oh,
afraid of people,
okay.
um, you know, character is massive for me.
Right.
And the people that work for me are the highest character people I've ever worked with.
Okay.
Um, and
Stop on that because you emphasize. So do you want do you want your staff to disagree with you, Jason? So if they have different ideas.
oh,
So
I love it.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
mean, and I think but that's part of the character is, if you see something and that something could be better, if you have high character, you're not going to be able to hold that in.
yeah.
You're going to want the team to win. And to me, high character is a team approach versus an I approach. And high character is so many things.
Sure.
But Yeah, I love debate. I love ideas.
Mhm.
I am always begging and seeking out ideas on every micro detail, on every turn we make in any direction. I'm asking a lot of opinions.
Well, that's great. Now, I want to ask you a star chaser question because I know one of the talents you have worked with in the past is Dolly Parton. So you worked with her. What do big stars like that teach you, and do you share that with your talent? So,
Yeah, I was brought in to Dolly's management company by a guy named Danny Nozell, who's Dolly's longtime manager. He's
mhm.
amazing, and I primarily worked mainly with him.
Yes.
But the first time I ever heard Dolly talk at a press, it was a press meeting to promote a live record she had just made,
Mhm.
and there was high level press from all the major outlets there.
Yeah.
And she was asked about how she had the longevity that she had, and she said, I surround myself with people that are smarter than me. And so, that is the biggest thing that I learned from, I would say, her.
Yeah.
Um, or mainly it was listening to her.
Yeah.
Um, but that's always stuck with me.
Always a good lesson. So, never a good sign. So we say, if you're the smartest person in the room, at least if you are, then shut up.
Yeah.
so, how do you so for talent, whatever? Just give us some. All of the managers watching this have to give straight talk to their employees from time to time. So, if you have an artist and you're working with, or an employee, what's your technique for giving them a straight talk about perhaps a new piece of music or something else? What's your technique, Jason, or your approach? So.
I think in the past I used to use an approach that was more of like a sandwich approach. I'd always start off with positivity,
Mhm.
then talk about the hard thing, and then go back to positivity. But I'm just a firm believer that if you love somebody, and I operate, my true north is what I'm doing based out of love. I mean, obviously I'm not perfect. I have my off moments or off days, but I try to always stay very predictable in my responses and reactions. I
Mhm.
never raise my voice. I never use bad language. I never talk down to people. I always view people at my level. And I just view that if you really care about somebody and you love somebody, you'll always tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And so I try to always do it thoughtfully and in love and care. But I'm not afraid to tell anyone the truth.
Great.
Because to me, that's the only way that somebody can grow and become better.
Great. Not only are you in the music business, an entrepreneur, and all the good things you do, you're also an author. You've written 2 books. And what do you want to tell us about your titles, and what did you learn from writing books? And I know that you've had a positive response. So tell us about that, Jason.
Yeah. And I've also helped other artists of mine launch books too. But the 2 books I've written in the past, one is called Your Love Pursues, which is just basically my story.
Hmm.
It's my story in the music industry, my life story, my story with finding God and how that's
Mhm.
informed and shaped my life. And then the second book I put out was called Business Backwards.
Hmm.
It's extremely short, but I just coming up in
That's
the
an
music
interesting
industry.
title. So, what does business backwards mean? I like that title. So,
The premise of the book is just how do you put people before the deal?
hmm,
How do you not care about the deal and care about people?
okay.
And I found through my journey in the music industry, at least, that most people I was dealing with put the deal first and put people second, and put their own self first and puts people second, put
Mhm.
their income as more important than people. And
Right.
so it was kind of, how do you love people first, care about people first, want the best for people first, and think about the dollar that everyone has to make second.
Right. Yeah. And I like what's a great title, Business Backwards. It's wonderful. So now you've had a long career in in music. You're now focusing somewhat, or I don't know, exclusively on Christian music. What led you to that side of the house, Jason? So,
Well, we are still involved in all genres of music. I mean, we have artists. We have an artist that just met with the president of Universal Music in Israel the other day. That's a pop artist.
mhm,
We have a country duo that we just developed that's amazing.
mhm,
Alternative artists that have gotten deals this year, major deals this year. So we are involved in all genres of music. But I would say that the bullseye of my heart is I love God, and I
mhm,
love what the Bible has done for my life. And um, above all else, I want to be a part of spreading something that can truly change people's lives and change people's families, change people's marriages, change kids' trajectories.
mhm.
And I've found that Christian music does that more than any other genre of music. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about it.
Oh, that's great. So, Jason, we could keep going, and I love all your management tips that our audience is going to love. So, we're racing toward the end of our interview. But as you know, I ask every guest a story about grace. Do you have something you want to share with us, Jason? So, yeah.
Yeah, I have many stories of grace being bestowed upon me, but one of the early stories that I remember is there's a very successful artist manager in the music business. He was more on the dance side of music when I got in the business, but he's done some huge things.
Mhm.
And he was a pretty big manager in New York City when I started. And his name is Gary Salzman. Really, really nice guy. And I was just starting out. I was brand new. I knew very little. And he was the only person that when I met with him, when I was pounding on doors basically in New York City
Yeah.
24 years ago, he was the only person that actually sat me down. And the way he looked at me and talked to me, I could tell he actually saw me and he cared about me. And I knew he was extremely busy, and he had a staff and multi-floor office in New York City. And he was with his business partner, and he said to me, he said, do you really understand what you're getting into? Do you know what this looks like? Do you know what it feels like? Do you know what the journey actually is like of being in management and being an artist manager in the music industry and being in the music industry? And I said, I think I do. And he was the only person. He took about 20 to 30 minutes and gave me some really good pointers and showed me a lot of care and explained the business to me. And I carried that with me, and I try to educate every single artist that I sit down with about the business because of what he did for me. Because nobody else ever did that for me. And I still had a lot of things I had to piece together on my
Sure.
own. You
Yeah.
can't learn an industry in 20 minutes. It took me over 20 years to learn an industry,
Okay.
but it was the care that really showed me something. And so I've tried to carry that with me.
Yeah, that is such a great story, Jason. And it shows that this gentleman is busy and he could have blown you off like everybody else did. And that doesn't mean he's a bad person, but he actually sat down with you with his partner and gave you the facts of life about the business and did you a great turn and helped you shape your life. That is a story of grace. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, Jason, how can people find you? Or maybe you don't want to be found if you're getting pitched all the time. But how do people find you, Jason? So,
Yeah, we really don't accept any unsolicited, approaches, only because we're being sent so much, so
yeah,
much. And it's when we're sent an artist or a potential, hire as an employee, it's always through trusted sources that
yeah.
we have had success with in the past. But we have websites like 117.com and Noble Management's another company we have. And but yeah.
Okay, great. Jason, it is such a pleasure to talk to you. You have a wealth of stories to share, but some really penetrating insights that I know are going to help people. So thank you for sharing that time. And with that, we'll go off.